All right, all right. Welcome to the Real Tea Radio Show. I'm your host, Rich, a local real estate broker. This is episode 1 of the podcast, so I'm super jazzed. And our first ever guest on the show is Mr. Brent Blankenburg, a very good personal friend, a mortgage broker with Master Mortgage, and also a Airbnb superhost. Brent, is there something that you don't do?
I don't sing. You don't want to hear me sing.
All right, I'll take your word for it, man. Brent also makes phenomenal briskets. Thanks to his recipe, you can't miss making a brisket. But yeah, Brent, super excited to have you on, man. Let's go ahead and jump into some questions. Let the people know who you are, what you do, what you're all about. See, you're sitting at your property in Pine. See the trees
You
back
got it.
there.
Yep. Dream come true, man. Working from home. Who would have thought COVID would have brought this into my life? Working here, sitting in the trees.
Yes, sir. Awesome, man. Cool. So could you share a little bit about your journey, how you got started in lending, and any pivotal moments that led you to where you are today, sitting on your deck in Pine?
Yeah, for sure. So, you mentioned I do mortgages. That's my primary source of income, but also do the Airbnb hosting, and both of those have been a part of my life for about the last decade. So I'll talk a little bit about both of those. But to start with lending, I basically was in my late 20s and I hadn't found any kind of career that I enjoyed. I thought I just was gonna hate all of my jobs. I was not in a very good place. And I was living in Oklahoma at the time, and I wanted to be in Colorado. That was the one thing I knew for sure, was I want Colorado to be home. So my parents lived in Colorado at the time, so I swallowed my pride and moved to Colorado and lived in my parents' basement while I started my journey of figuring out how the heck I was going to make it in this world. So yeah, it was very humble beginnings. Um, my little sister actually was working for a realtor. She was doing like transaction management at the time.
Okay.
And he's a guy that I think she felt like I'd have a lot in common with, and he was like really successful financially. So, I'm just lost thinking like, what the heck am I going to do? And she's like, Brent, you should sit down with Dino and, just have a lunch with him, see if he has any good suggestions. So I had
Dino.
lunch. Dino, yeah, Dino. So Dino and I talked, and he asked me my background, and I told him I have a finance degree, and basically all my jobs have been in sales and finance in some capacity. And he said, man, sales and finance, you ought to get into mortgages. He's like, my mortgage guys play more golf than anybody I know. And I was like,
But you
"Yeah,
hate
that sounds
golfing, don't you?
I
Don't
don't
you
hate
hate
golfing.
golfing?
I'm just no good at it. But, any career that somebody says, you get to play more golf, that also means you can do more, biking or whatever else in lieu of golfing. But golfing costs money. So it also means you have enough money to pay for the round. So
Those
I didn't
mountain
have,
bikes ain't cheap either.
no, heck no.
But freedom,
But
freedom of your time and your schedule, and really able
yes,
to make your own schedule, make your own time to do whatever the hell you want.
yes, exactly. Um, and freedom, that's the number one motivating factor to me. That was always my top thing, was freedom comes first, and then other things after that, but freedom's always been most important. So he put me in contact with his lenders. One of the lenders eventually hired me, and that's what got me started. It was actually almost exactly 10 years ago, and next month it'll be 10 years. And my beginnings were humble. I didn't work for a good boss. I didn't learn a lot at my first company, but I did learn what not to be in the industry and as a boss from him. So I take that as a valuable lesson. But yeah, moved a little closer to Denver at that point, and then just pretty much got out and was meeting people as often and frequently as I could. So I was doing all kinds of networking and everything. So that's how the mortgage thing started for me, and it took a long time to build. That took years to get any kind of success going. But in the meantime, my origin story for Airbnbs is a little bit more exciting. So I'm going to share that if you don't mind.
No,
So
share away, man.
so I got started, and I was about to move to a new place. I was looking for a new house to rent, And me and a friend who Jeff, we were going to live together in a new house, but we wanted to have a third roommate. We were both just had started businesses, new to Denver. We just wanted to meet a lot of people. So we're like, let's get a third roommate too. So we put up an ad on Craigslist, and it turns out my my current wife is one of the people who responded to my ad, and we ended up moving in together. So the three of us started out just as roommates. Obviously, I didn't know her, and I was renting the the room above the garage, so it was like a kind of a detached unit.
Sure.
And I was in there, and then Jeff and Kim were in the main house. And a few months after moving in, you know, I start thinking she's pretty cute and really cool, and I was real nervous about about blurring the lines and everything with roommates, but we ended up going for it. And I still wasn't making like any money in mortgages. So at some point, I actually read this Time magazine article about the sharing economy, about, people renting their car on Turo and about Airbnb. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm already sleeping with Kim every night anyways. I might as well just list my unit on Airbnb and try to make some money. So I did that indeed, and moved into the main house with Kim. I started getting bookings immediately, and in almost no time, it was covering the whole monthly rent payment just with renting out that unit. So that really changed my life because, for one thing, it put me in a better financial position, but it also made me realize how much I loved the passive income, active income, stuff that you work hard for. When you're out showing houses and spending your nights and weekends educating and showing people places, it's, that's great income as well. But at that point, my, ultimate goal became passive income. So,
Yeah,
that,
and you witness it firsthand, and I mean, you have all these gurus and people teaching, how you take your hard-earned money and invest it in things that can provide passive income. And I think that term gets thrown around so loosely these days. You have all of these, quote unquote gurus, do this, do that, whatever. But basically, started in the basement of your parents' house, realized the opportunity for freedom, uncapped earning potential, met with Dino, got into mortgages, um, started making money there, and then turned your current rent, well, not your current, but your past rental experience while you were living with roommates and your now wife.
hmm
That kind of sparked your interest in the whole Airbnb journey, and you kind of tasted the passive income and that cash flow from renting units, and you kind of got into it like that. And right now, I mean, you're moving out of your main house today, right? To rent it out for a week and make some cash there. And I know that property that you're at makes a good chunk of change from what you've said.
yeah.
So that's awesome, man. So with all of that, um, challenges and triumphs, man. So every journey has its ups and downs. Can you highlight a particularly challenging moment that you faced and how you overcame it? And on the flip side, what's been one of your proudest achievements?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the less sexy answer for the challenging thing was the hardest thing for me was always waiting for the success to happen. It seemed like it took forever. I mentioned I was in my late 20s, so I, didn't have a lot of wisdom and life experience to lean on, and I certainly didn't have a lot of patience. So the the long-term hurt was really just like I really wanted to be successful financially. I wanted to be somebody in the industry and help a lot of people. And I kept having all these older people in my business. They worked for the companies I worked for, and they would say, like, oh my gosh, Brent, you're going to do so good at this business. And, telling me all these positive, encouraging things about that I'm special and everything. And I was just like, yeah, but when? Like, I'm still not making any money. It was a few years before I started making any kind of money. And, then it took even a couple more years to start making real money. So yeah, to me, the hardest part was it just took way too long. And in hindsight, I kind of wish I would have known that. Although I think if I would have told myself, hey, just have patience, I don't think that would have actually allowed me to have patience. So,
Tell
um,
somebody to have patience when they don't have it to begin with is very tough.
Yeah, but I
And
will
I
say, I interviewed with my second boss, who was like my mentor. This guy was, taught me a lot about the business. And in the interview, it was kind of like the standard questions. And one of them, he said, "What are some of your like strongest points, and what are some of your weakest
I
attributes?"
lied, dude. I hate that
And
question. You go in for a job interview. What are your
yeah,
biggest weaknesses?
yeah, exactly.
How do you answer that? I'm too hard of a worker, man. I'm a workaholic.
Yeah,
You'll never
I
get rid of
know.
me.
Yeah, I think I'd answer it differently now. I know I would, but at the time I told him patience. I was like, I'm just, patience has always been a weak spot of mine. And he was like, "Oh, well, good news, Brent. That's actually a good thing in our business to not be patient." And I was like, "What?" So, like with mortgages and also with real estate, we have contract deadlines. We have to make things happen by in a certain time, and you can't
Yes.
really just be complacent and sit there and be like, "Okay, we'll just see if this happens." You really have to actively jump in and make things happen. So I was amazed when he said that, and yeah, that also just made me so stoked for this career that like, oh my gosh, my weakness could actually be a strength, and I guess it was.
Awesome, man. So to overcome that, I mean, you basically just told yourself and kept reaffirming to yourself that like it'll happen one of these days and it'll happen, and you kind of believed and had that faith. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's one thing I had in spades. I mean, I thought that it was possible, and I was so excited, man. I mean, even when I wasn't making money, although it was hard, I was just so excited at the prospect of the fact that I might actually be like a successful lender someday and might be making real money and everything. Yeah, I wish I could channel that today to where it's like I was going to work every day and I was just all excited and wasn't making any money. And once you start making some real, real serious money, then it's like, you can't quite channel that same excitement for like the regular days when you're not bringing in deals and all that.
Yeah, it's funny. You talk to some successful people, and they always mention the journey and the beginning. And some business owners and entrepreneurs frequently mention that they wouldn't mind going back to square one and starting it all over again. And those were some of the best times, of like not knowing where your next buck is coming from, like not knowing how you're going to pay this, pay that, and kind of being on edge and with your back against the wall and forcing you to innovate, create, and be excited about what you do and bringing value to people. So I've heard it before. It seems like you went through it. I've been through it too. Yeah, ebbs and flows with this business. Where rates are now and stuff. Things have slowed down the last year, so
Oh
um,
yeah.
you know, there's definitely
Yeah, that was
ebbs and flows.
Yeah, the last couple years, they were something also to overcome. We had it so easy for several years with historically low rates that were kept
Yeah.
really low for too long, honestly. But in the meantime, we were having a great time. We were making tons of money, doing lots of refinances and meanwhile, we're also hiring lots of people, because we need to close all these loans. So we were amassing a big team, and as was everybody in my business. And then next thing the floor comes out from under you. The Fed just keeps raising rates, and then it's like, shoot, what do we do with all these people and all these expenses? So yeah, ebbs and flows, man. That's this. Our businesses are not meant for people who need like a steady paycheck. And luckily that allows us to have less people in the business and allow us to make really good money if you can stick with it and be good at it, and okay with not getting any money in some paychecks and even some full months, not receiving a paycheck. So,
Yeah, no, and I don't know about you on the lending side, man, but there's no shortage of realtors, and I know a lot of them are dropping off this year. I heard somewhere it's like 10,000 a month nationwide, just due to the lack of sales and sales velocity. But I mean, since we're talking about the industry, given your experience, being a longtime vet in lending, moving around a couple of different shops, from what I know, positioning yourself, the best in the best possible way to serve your clients and provide them the best sort of value. Where do you see the industry headed in the next few years? Do you see any emerging trends or technologies that are being implemented into your industry that you're particularly excited about, scared about, jazzed about? I mean, talk to me.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm gonna have to get your thoughts on this after I answer. I feel like you're a lot more in the know than I am. So, we people have said about my business for a long time that we're, going extinct. We're going to be dinosaurs. Everybody's going to be able to just get their own mortgage. They said the same thing about financial advisors when E-Trade came about. Um, I do think there are technologies that are already implemented and that are coming that are going to allow some people, to not even need somebody like me to get a loan. Like if you're really tech savvy and you're really well qualified and you feel very comfortable with the whole process, then I do think that that client might be not needing someone like me in the future. But there's always going to be tons of people who do need, my services, your services, people who aren't experts and they haven't bought a ton of houses and, you know, not even need us from like a procedural standpoint, but need us from like an emotional standpoint. I mean, how much of your job is like, you know, trying to get people to understand like, oh, the house price that you're paying, I know it's a lot, but like it's going to be okay. And like, oh, I know you didn't get your offer accepted, but it's going to be okay. I mean, do you find yourself doing a lot of that?
Oh man! First, I'm a therapist. Second, I'm a real estate agent. And to your point, our jobs, our professions have been under attack, and they're always going to be under attack, and that's fine. Because I think that opens up an opportunity for us to again innovate, create, and provide true value to people that they might not get on an online application. And what people don't understand, I think, is the pivotal role that we play, in the transaction, in the process, in the emotional support. I mean, somebody's got a house that they've lived in for 20 years. It's hard letting go, and then all of a sudden you get an offer that's below list price. I mean, they take it personally,
Yeah.
right? And that's just one little tiny example, of how, we as professionals help people work through that psychological, event. Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, they're all, what's happened on my side of things is you have these giant, conglomerates, billion-dollar corporations that now have a, brand that's recognized in the marketplace, such as a Zillow. I mean, 90% of people when they start looking for houses, they go to Zillow.
Hmm.
That's just a fact. As much as I want them to go to my website, my data on my website is the same, if not better, than a Zillow. The fact is, they're nationally, if not internationally, recognized as a real estate brand, and so
Hmm.
people go there and start filling out their information. And I work with Zillow and have worked with Zillow in the past, and you're facing that too. So these people fill out; they just don't know where to go. So it's
Yeah.
our job to get out there and speak to them and guide them and let them know the true value of a good professional. Because again, there's a lot of lenders, man. As you know, I don't know how many there are in Denver, but there's probably about 35,000 agents just in the Denver metro, or that might be in the whole state of Colorado. I'm not sure, but you know 10% of us do 90% of the business. And so you have a lot of these people that don't know what they're doing, thought it would be easy and fun to get into the business and, make $20,000 commission checks. And that's another topic that we won't get into right now. But as far as, technologies and emerging trends, that's what I've seen since I got into the business 7 years ago. Is these companies, Zillow, Redfin's, just getting bigger and bigger, and what they're trying to do is put us out of a job. And again, I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're going to cut the market at least in half, if not a little bit more, is in terms of cutting the agents out and the lenders out. Because dude, they ZHL, Zillow Home Loans, they offer loans. So they're
Hmm.
they're going for with that approach of one stop shop of somebody that doesn't know any better. They go and they type in an address on Google, and then boom, they get wired to Zillow, and now it's like, okay, I can click to see the home here. I can click to get a loan here. I can do a mortgage calculator. What do I need an agent for? Right?
Yeah.
And they get paired with these agents that pay Zillow a lot of money for that info, for that contact info, and it's just that's what I've seen the last few years, and I'm sure you've seen that too. But AI is
Yeah,
coming in, super exciting.
I mean, I think what you're doing here and is great. It's going to be great to get information out to people because the problem with what you were just saying is that people don't know what they don't know. They don't even know what questions they should be asking, or they don't even know what pitfalls might become them by hiring a agent that doesn't know what they're doing, or by just using some online system for a loan, or using a lender who doesn't have their best interest in mind. So
Right.
it's our industries, it's not something that people come up against every day of their life. Some people never buy a house, some people buy just a few in their whole lifetime. So it's not something that they are constantly talking about and hearing about like we are every day. So yeah, a lot of times they just don't even know how bad of a position they can get themselves in. And I learned it
Yeah.
really early on. I had a client who we were looking to refinance their loan, and he had a great credit score. And I pulled his credit, and I saw that it was an FHA loan, and I'm like, why would they have put you in an FHA loan? Your debt to income ratio is great. You have great credit. And then I'm like, oh, FHA loans have slightly higher or slightly lower interest rates than conventional. Now you pay a lot more for them. You pay up front a lot more in cost, and then you also have mortgage insurance that's more expensive for the life of the loan. So it's not the best loan for people who have great credit. However, if you have, a lender who's willing to trick somebody, then they can say, "Oh, I actually have a loan that's even got a lower interest rate than what you've been offered." And then they steer them away from a conventional loan in this case, which actually is in their best interest, and they sell them an FHA loan, which is not in their best interest. And meanwhile, the client doesn't even know, that they've been duped.
And you know what? And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that is a dirty fact of the matter here in this industry, is that the people that don't know what they don't know, which is 90% of the population, get duped into things such as the scenario that you just explained, and it's like that might not be the best product for them, but the lender probably got a better rip off the product and a better commission,
Yep.
and explain it. So it's like the ethics and the morality and who you work with has such a pivotal role in all of this as well, especially when you're dealing with hundreds of thousands, if not millions and millions of dollars. You're
Yep.
not buying a cell phone or a pair of shoes or whatever. There's so much that goes into it, and we're just talking about the real estate side, which is like the house, the actual house, the lot, and then the lender side, the number stuff. But we're not talking about the title issues that may come up. I mean, the insurance issues that may come up. I had a deal recently that they terminated based upon long-term insurability of the property. They found out that the insurance was going to be way too much, and that they're at risk for huge premium increases, just because of the location of the property. It was actually a mountain property. Um, so, I think it really depends on the intent of the message as well. And I hear a lot of realtors right now saying it's a great time to buy. It's like it just gets so old, man.
Yeah.
And it's like it's just so salesy. It stinks.
Yeah.
And for not like that's you can't give broad based generalized advice to people when it comes down to such a personalized situation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like you said, it's a huge purchase for people. So it's amazing to me that people try to skirt around using an expert realtor and using a lender that they can know, like, and trust. But we're living in a more and more disconnected world, and more things are done online, and people are more and more anxious about actually talking to people, face to face. They want to do everything through a little chat box or whatever, and it's putting people in a rough position. So, I mean, to bring that back to what I see happening in the future here, I've quit trying to predict what rates are going to do, which direction interest rates are going. It's largely been up for the last few years, but I follow economists, and they do all kinds of number crunching, and even they can't always predict which direction things are going. But I personally think that at some point in the next few years, I think we're actually going to have to enter into a recession. I know a lot of people feel like we are in a recession right now. I will agree that we are in a very strange economy. I think inflation's a lot higher right now than what the numbers would say, and there's a lot about the way that they present the numbers online that can be seen through if read some economists that really care. Um, but yeah, I think things are going to get worse, mainly because markets are cyclical. They always go up and down. There's never been a time in history where they just went up forever and never crashed. So, uh, you know, we've been in the longest sustained period of upturn, for the last 15 years or whatever it's been now. And I don't think any other country has really ever had this long of economic growth. So I think it's just a matter of time that eventually we're going to have to enter into a real recession that everybody's going to know we're in. Um, I don't know what that'll exactly look like because it always seems like through history there's like black swan events that people didn't, you might have known that there's going to be a recession, but it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know it was going to be that, everybody couldn't pay their mortgage loans anymore because they were getting themselves into adjustable rate mortgages with balloon payments, and then nobody can pay for their house. So I have no idea what this next one's going to look like. It won't be that because luckily they've gotten rid of a lot of those loans and everything. But I do think there's going to be a kind of a scary period in the future, which will mean lower interest rates eventually because the Fed will have to lower interest rates to re-spark the economy. But if enough people are losing their jobs and unable to make their mortgage payments, then it could have some serious effects on housing. But yeah, I have no idea, man. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows, man. And anybody that tells you that they know that rates are going to drop next year or, in 6 months or whatever, is just full of crap, honestly. And I don't know either, and I don't pretend to know. I just look at the data and I read a lot and I listen to all these people. And you're entirely correct. We're in a cycle. Every, mini cycle lasts 7 to 10 years. Every super cycle is 50 to 100 years. From what I've read, what I've heard and educated myself about is that we're at a 50 to 100 year super cycle. Now, speaking of recessions, out of the last 6 recessions that we've had here in the States, out of 2 of those recessions, only 2, housing prices dipped. So just because it's a recession doesn't mean, and I'm tying this back into real estate since we're both in the industry, but
Yeah.
and that's really what people want to know, man. What are housing prices going to do? Because ultimately, that's the biggest wealth factor to the American population is the equity in their house and what the real estate market's doing. And so, you look at this time around, and you have these people, and I'm young, you're young, man. Like, I didn't lose my nut back in '08 and all of that. Like, I was graduating high school in 2009, and so I didn't really have a grip on what the hell was going on. But like, you watch, The Big Short and all these movies, and
Hmm.
read and listen, and you see some similarities for sure. But like, this time is different, truly. And why I say that is because we're dealing with a lot more international issues as well. So we have inflation, which we did not have inflation like this, 15, 20, or '08, whatever that was. What are we, 2023? 15
Yeah.
years ago. We didn't have inflation like this. Our national deficit was 6 trillion back then. We're at 32 trillion now. You have all of these other initiatives, international initiatives, the BRICS nations forming, trying to, de-dollarize, the
Hmm.
world, deglobalize. So there's so many other factors. You have the Feds. You mentioned, quantitative tightening and quantitative easing. So QT is, raising rates and sucking liquidity out of the system. And then QE, quantitative easing, is, turning that money printer back on and lowering rates to spur the economy and economic activity.
Hmm.
And so right now we're in, the cycle of QT. And again, that's a cycle too. It's not like, they raise rates, lower rates, raise rates, lower rates. They typically, throughout history, raise them, hold them for a, certain amount of time until stuff starts breaking in the economy, and then until they're forced to lower rates again and start the printer back up.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different factors going on right now. For every 1%, from what I know, every 1%, a 30-year fix goes up. Let's say from a 5 to a 6% on a 30-year, we should see about a 10% price compression in home prices, and we haven't seen that over the last 18 months. And we went from shit 2 3/4 to what are we at now, 7 3/4.
Yeah.
So I'd say, depending on the zip code, depending on the neighborhood, because real estate is very hyper local. We have seen anywhere from a 5 to 10% price compression already, and a lot of that has to do with inventory. And I hate to beat, what's the saying, beat a with a whatever, beat a dead horse
Dead
with a
horse.
stick. Yeah, I mean, we do have an inventory problem. We're below, a million active homes nationwide. And let's just speak here in Denver locally. I mean, we're at about 6,000 homes across the board. And that's single family, condo, and townhome, where, in 2008, 2009, we had 28,000. So we would literally need to 5X our inventory overnight in order to be in, an inventory glut like we had, 12, 13 years ago. So, there's got to be a lot more sellers, a lot more inventory coming online for us to be kind of in that situation. And what that means is like, distressed sales, man. And I hate to say it because that really means pain to the, American
Hmm.
family. I mean, if they can't if they're threatened with foreclosure, that's pain. That's not a easy thing for, anybody personally or for a family to go through. But that's the only way that I see, more inventory coming online. And these builders are not building fast enough, and they haven't been for the last 6 7 years. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the future. All we can do, I think, is continue to provide, the best possible service and knowledge and education to people. And for some people, it's a good time to buy. For some people, it's not. It
Yeah.
really just depends on their situation and how to work the numbers and work in tandem with you as well. I mean, usually I'm the first call when in reality
Hmm.
it should be you. um, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It's I do think that for most people who don't currently own a house, I always say like if you're renting and you're trying to decide whether or not to buy, most of the time, the right time to buy is now, if you can afford it and you can find a place that you like, in my opinion, because the sooner you can start paying your own mortgage as opposed to paying somebody else's mortgage, the better, in my opinion. And over through the arc of history, in the long term, house prices have always gone up, and I'm pretty sure they will continue to do so, especially with the inflation we're seeing. Owning a home is a huge hedge against inflation because when inflation happens and the dollar's worth less, that means that prices go up. So with your house, that means your prices are going up. And if you have a rental property, that typically means that rents are going up as well. So it is a huge hedge against inflation. Some people I talk to just think of it as being like, oh, I'm not going to go into debt $500,000. And they're like, from a fear perspective, not wanting to have a loan of a certain dollar amount, but they're completely comfortable with paying X amount for rent for the rest of their lives and never building any kind of equity. So that's where education can help people. But there's some people you can't help. I have a I have a friend who back in like I guess it was probably 9 years ago or something when I first got in the business. And I was like, dude, you got to buy a house, man. You can qualify. You got a great job. You got good credit, savings. And he was like, he's one of these know it all guys that really doesn't know anything, but thinks he does. And he was like, no, man, I'm not buying. He's like, no, we're about to have another 2008 thing. I'm going to wait until that happens and then I'm going to buy something for real cheap. And, in the last 9 years here in Denver, he would have more than doubled his money. He could have put down $15,000, in down payment, and probably would now have several hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity. So I don't think it's advisable to try and time the market, and think that you're going to be smarter than everybody else and wait until things crash down. If you're renting right now, it's at least smart to talk to somebody like you and somebody like me and at least know a little bit more about what it actually looks like.
Yeah, and I love the phrases, it's not timing the market, it's time in the market. You don't wait to buy, you buy and wait. there's all of these, nifty, thrifty little sayings, and they do have validity to them. Again, just really just depends on your situation. Like I talked to a guy this weekend where, he's paying close to 3,000 in rent. And he doesn't want, like, he literally doesn't want to. He plans on staying here in the metro for, another 10 years, this and that. His kids are finishing up school. He's got another kid at CU. So, for somebody like that has, a solid job, solid income, good credit, low debt, there's really no point in renting and throwing away and lighting on fire $36,000 a year when you can put that towards your principal loan balance.
Yeah.
So you're entirely right. The dirty thing that, I think, um, lenders and realtors as well, kind of omit with the whole, just refi in a year when rates drop. What they don't say is that, if prices do dip a little bit more, which again, like we're going to be in a volatile next couple of years. That's just the bottom line, with pricing and rates and all of that. But what they don't say is that, let's say you buy for 500 a day at 7%, rates drop down to 4.5 next year, but now all of a sudden, prices are 400. You're not going to be able to refi unless you bring that extra money to the table. And I think, people don't know that, and they just go by, the things that are thrown at them. And so that's like another vital piece of education that, I try to put out there to people as well. Because again, like you don't want to rush into this with like FOMO and this and that. Like you've seen what the market's done over the last, 3, 4, 5 years. So there's a lot to go into that, but that's why it's so important to work with, ethical, moral, smart professionals such as yourself and I to truly get educated on the process and what the best move is for you, and whether that's in 30 days or 3 years. Planning is very wise. Planning with what is it? Failing to plan is planning to fail.
Mm.
I got all the one-liners, man.
Yeah, buddy.
But
I dig
yeah, I
it.
think that's enough about work, man. Let's not bore
Yeah,
these
let's.
people. You're a super successful guy, man, and I do look up to you in a lot of different ways. Let's talk about your personal growth a little bit. Beyond your professional accomplishments, how do you continue to grow and develop as an individual on a personal level? Any habits, books, practices that have had a significant impact on your life? I know we're part of a couple of mastermind groups and this and that, but
Mhm.
how do you keep it all together, man, and just keep cruising and keep crushing and hit me?
Yeah. Well, you know the answer to this, and for me, it's called the 90-day journey. So my mentor, who I mentioned earlier, he wrote a book, like a sales book called the 90-day journey, and basically I got plugged into that. I don't do it just like on a 90-day basis, nor did he. He basically got to where he just forever did this journey, and I was always like, gosh, that'd be so cool. And so now I'm kind of on the same journey to where I now have daily and weekly disciplines, and I carry around a sheet every week that shows what I need to do every week. And it's not just professional things, it's personal growth as well. So it's a really good program to help you realize that there are probably a lot more aspects of life that are important to you that you should be working on than just a couple that come to top of mind right away. It's easy for people to probably say, like, oh, I want to make more money and I want to lose weight or something like that. But are those really the only two things that matter to you in the world? It's probably not. So, the program that I do in particular, it helps you to identify what those important life accounts are to you, and then to grade yourself and say, how good of a job am I doing at these things? And then put plans in action of how, what do I need to do on a daily and weekly basis to improve these areas of life. So that one's been huge for me. I recommend it to anybody, but I also don't think that the program is a magic bullet. I don't think that my program that I do is the only one or the best one. It works really well for me, but I think the important thing is that people are just doing something, working towards something. There's been a ton of these self-help books that I've read, and we get little nuggets from each one of them. So yeah, I think being on some kind of planned journey with an organized plan, like actively working every week. And my boss used to say, you just have to move the needle just a little bit every day. So even if you didn't have the most productive day, it's like, did you at least move the needle a little bit? Um, so
1%
yeah,
better every day. And
yeah.
everything that you're saying is entirely correct. I mean, you listen to any successful person, habits, persistence, consistency. I mean, it's all in their vocabulary, and this is exactly what you're talking about. And I think you mentioned the life accounts. So that 90-day journey, it's not a magic bullet, as nothing in this world is. But if you sign up with the link below, man, I will get you free cash flow for the rest of your life. Um, there's no magic bullet, and I've done the 90-day journey with you a couple of times, and I think what you've gotten from it as well is even if you don't carry over your habits and behaviors from that 90-day journey into the next 90 days, there is 99% chance that at least one of those habits that are positive habits for your life carry over and remain with you for the next 90 years.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that's what you mentioned to me with with going through that the first time with you, and that really resonated and stuck with me, and it's true because
Yep.
it's hard to implement 30 different habits and keep going with them. It's tough, but
Yep.
that journey and that setup, with the 90-day journey. If there's anything that you can grab from it, it's that at least some of the good habits will carry over.
Yep.
Um, Dude, if you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be? I mean, any wisdom, lessons that you know now that you wish you would have known when you were younger?
Yeah. Um, I mean, most of the things that we would tell ourselves, our younger version, I don't think we would be able to grasp it so I have thought about this question a little bit, and what I would tell myself is that habits and routines and, um, like sobriety and maturity, like they are not going to make you an old boring person, because honestly it was a huge fear of mine, man. I grew up like a gypsy. I moved around constantly, and I never had anything like normal or anything like stay the same. It was always like everything was changing. And in my adult life, that carried into my adult life, and I just needed constant change. And like I was so terrified of like habits and routine. Like it just made me think like I was just going to become some normie, boring person, like old person right away.
Yes.
And so for the first 3, 4 years of my journey here in mortgages, I just was unwilling to commit to any kind of routines. It was like, I'm not going to do that. I'll keep working hard. I'll keep trying as hard as I can, but I'm not doing routines. And,
Mm,
gosh, I just at that point had no idea how beneficial they could be, and it's changed my life. But along with that is the patience of knowing that you don't have to have everything perfect all at once, nor can you. That's like impossible. But our younger selves want to think, I want it all now, and just thinking like, well, you can't have it all now. If I could have told myself that, but what you could do is you could do small incremental things every day for the next several years, and then in 10 years from now, you'll have it all. So I think that would have helped me, and maybe I would have taken the advice. I don't know.
same, and I think we're all human beings. When we're that young, we're invincible. We don't want to listen to anybody. And I was actually terrified. I'm still like a little part of me, and that I'm trying to kill that part, but a little part of me is still, I don't want to say terrified, but resistant
Sure.
to habits and rituals and this and that. I'd say I've changed and come a long way in that, but again, I'm 32, and for all of my 20s, and even in first couple of years of my 30s, I've always resisted that. And yeah, you think you're invincible, man, and you don't want to become that boring guy driving around to work for the 9 to 5 and all of that, and you think it's something bad,
Yep.
when it's really not. It's a great supplement and a positive impact on your life, both not only professionally but personally. I
Hmm.
mean, if I don't stretch my back every day, it starts to hurt.
Yep.
And that's just one habit, that like enhances my life
Hmm.
personally, for the better. So yeah,
Yeah, man.
man.
Another thing, just sitting here talking to you, it makes me realize another thing that's super important, and it's contributed to my success, is surrounding myself with great people like yourself who also want more for their life. and people who are trying and, you know, they want to be better, like being involved, getting plugged into a group, or as we call it, a mastermind. And also you have to sometimes get rid of relationships that aren't serving you, you know, the people that are bringing you down. So yeah, I'm super thankful to have you. I'm glad to see you're doing this, man. It's awesome. I know how much you know about what you do and about the markets, and so the more people can hear you, it's going to benefit our community.
Right back at you, man. Thank you so much for joining me. You're the first one to take the leap, and I really do, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate that. And like I said, man, I look up to you in more ways than one, not only professionally but personally as well. So it was an absolute joy to have you on today. Is there anything else that you want to share with our community before we hop off and kind of say Auf Wiedersehen?
Well, man, I hope I'll come back on again sometime and we'll chop it up about a whole
Yes.
bunch of other topics. So if you ever have a late cancellation, let me know. I'd love to come back on. But yeah, I'll say one
Awesome.
thing. I'll try to keep it short. But another huge part of my success was understanding financial leverage, which in the financial world that means like using debt to buy more than you could otherwise. So in practical terms, that means most people don't buy a $300,000 house with $300,000 of cash. Instead, they put 5% down, $15,000, and they own then a $300,000 asset, you know, but they only had to part ways with 15,000. So this is a concept that I tell as many people as I can about, because, you know, if you were to take that 15,000 and buy that house compared to taking that 15,000 and like buying a stock or something, um, if you buy a stock and the stock goes up by 5%, then you earn 5% on that 15,000. If you buy the house and the house goes up by 5%, then you make 5% on the 300,000, not just the 15,000. So this is a pretty basic concept, but one that a lot of people don't think about when they're trying to decide, like, should I buy a house or not? And for me, you know, like it was huge because I bought my first two houses each with 3% down. So I put very little into them, and then they ended up creating hundreds of thousands of dollars for me. And that's the money you don't have to work for. So financial leverage.
Financial leverage and financial literacy, and they don't teach
Yes.
this stuff in schools. So if we can educate some people and help some people out and better their lives, I mean, I'm all for it, man. It sounds like that's what you're into, and I'm into it as well. But
Yeah.
definitely have you back on, man. Definitely want to share, some other of your passions, surrounding your property. I know you're a big wood guy, so would love to unpack on that. But for today, I think we're wrapping it up here. So Brent, thank you again for coming on. It's been a true joy, and we'll
Yes.
catch you soon.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Yes, sir.
See ya.
And that's a wrap on another episode of the Real Tea Radio Show. Thank you for tuning in and indulging in these honest and thought-provoking conversations. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, like, and leave a comment on your favorite platform. Remember, the Real Tea keeps flowing on our favorite social media channels, so connect with us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Until next time, keep steeping in truth, growing with purpose, and embracing the authentic flavors of life. This is Rich signing off. Stay brewed.